Welcome to our final panel of the Niagara Leadership Summit for Women. I am so excited about this one. I think we really did leave the best for last. So without further ado, we're going to get started with our introduction. As always, we want to start this panel with a land acknowledgement. So we begin this panel by acknowledging the land on which we live and work as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties, which is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering places home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. We also want to take a moment to remind folks that the Niagara Leadership Summit for Women is hosted by the YWCA Niagara region. A little bit about the YW is that we're a local organization that stands for gender equity and gives a voice to those who are the most marginalized in our community. The YW offers emergency shelter and 3 stages of transitional housing to help women, families, and children break the cycle of poverty and homelessness for good. One more important notice that we want to mention is about our community guidelines. We want to take an opportunity to remind everyone that the Niagara Leadership Summit for Women is a safe and inclusive space for all. By participating in this session, you are agreeing to our community guidelines, and you can find those guidelines under the Important Documents tab on the Leadership Summit platform. We are all responsible for making this an inclusive environment, and we thank everyone for being a part of making that possible. All right, so into the meat and potatoes of it all, I want to introduce you to the wonderful women who are on this panel and supporting the summit with their time today. The first one is Lori Andrews. Lori Andrews is serving as our panel host today. Things you might want to know about Lori includes her role as a YWCA Niagara Region Board of Directors member. She's been a member for 5 years, and she's been our president for the previous 2. She's also a past board member of United Way. She's retired from General Motors after 36 years in finance and manufacturing in locations across Canada, US, and Korea. She has an undergraduate business degree from Western and an MBA from York University. She believes it's important to take risks, challenge yourself, and seek opportunities to learn new things. Thank you, Lori, for hosting our panel today. Next up, I want to introduce you to our first panelist, Siobhan Deary. Siobhan is the owner of a financial services practice in Niagara, specializing in financial literacy by guiding clients' short and long-term goals. As a former athlete, self-funded university graduate, and an entrepreneur, Siobhan understands the importance of planning, practice, and discipline. Siobhan is a Brock University graduate with an honors degree in business administration, specializing in analytics. Her mission is to help women like herself feel confident in making financial decisions by giving knowledge and tools to reach their money goals. Thank you, Siobhan, for being with us today. Next up is Sherry Rossi. Sherry Rossi is a senior HR consultant and has been in the field of HR for 18 years. She values her role as an agent of engagement, where she assists organizations ensuring their employees are committed to their organization and their goals. Sherry's hands-on and caring approach serves to create happy engaging teams that work cohesively together as individuals and a collective. Sherry is a certified human resources leader through the Human Resources Professional Association, and she's a member of their Niagara chapter. Last and certainly not least is Haley Bateman. Haley operates as a home daycare and enjoys doing consulting work in her spare time. She's an active volunteer in the community who continues to sit on 2 city committees, the Social Pillars and the Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, as their chair. Haley has also served in the community as a member of the board of directors of the Niagara Employment Agency. She's a mom of 3 who has been advocating for social justice for many years. In 2018, Haley threw her hat in the political ring by running for Niagara Regional Council. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today in our panel. And for everyone watching, I'm going to hand it over to Lori now, who's going to rock it. So it's all, the mic is to you, Lori, and I will be watching for questions in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Grace, for that wonderful introduction. So I am so honored and excited to be hosting this panel, and I'm looking forward to getting to know these amazing women. You may notice that we are all dressed in pink today. We are doing that to support breast cancer awareness. And you'll also notice that Siobhan even painted her walls pink for the occasion. But I have to say that I am a little bit sad that this is the last session of the summit before the closing ceremonies. And I hope that you will all join us. We have a pretty amazing closing ceremonies planned in upcoming after this. It has been such a wonderful event. I've learned so much over these last 3 days, and I'm inspired by all the speakers that I've heard, all the stories they told, the words of wisdom that they shared with us. It's just been amazing. So without further ado, I want to let these amazing women talk about their stories, how they got to where they are today. They all have very diverse backgrounds, and they have a lot of information to share. So practical skills to help women rise, that's the topic today. So first thing you think of, and I think we'd like to clarify, is what do you mean, or what do we mean by practical skills? So my first question to the panel is a two-part question, and I'm going to start with Siobhan. What are your practical skills, and how do you use them to empower women?
Yeah, okay, so hello everyone. My name's Siobhan, and as Grace had previously mentioned, I own a financial services practice. So a lot of my day-to-day is portfolio management, investments, knowing what accounts to use, what are the fees involved in doing all of that and creating financial plans, but also using insurance and different risk management features in that as well. So I think that those skills really translate to your everyday life. So a lot of that has to do with just your cash flow management in your household, managing your debts and knowing how to pay them down the most efficient way. I think a lot of things have to do with like large purchases, when you're buying a house and knowing the ins and outs of that, buying your cars. Do you know your credit score, and how that can affect the large purchases like homes and loans for different things. So I think the practical skills really have to do with how you manage money in your household and how you do that for your family and for yourself, for financial independence. And I think that those skills really give women power and confidence in themselves, and really kind of ease their anxieties. So I think my role and how I help women do that is teaching them those skills and how to manage their money, and answering their questions, and really being the support system for them and for their family to develop the skills.
Thank you. Sherry, do you want to answer the same two questions, please?
Sure. So I spent a lot of time thinking about what practical skills are. And as it's obvious, I mean, I could have gone on and on. As I was thinking about the answers to questions, just more kept popping up. And for me, because I'm in human resources, I think more along the lines of some soft skill, practical skills. So, you know, the things that I find are really important for women are the ability to be adaptable. So every situation that comes along, whether it's at work, in school, with your family, in the community, anything, you have to be adaptable, right? So you might have one idea on how your day is going to go, and then you arrive at work, or your child wakes up, or, you know, your dog gets sick, or, you know, whatever, and you have to be adaptable. So I think that's a really great skill to have in your everyday life, but also as a leader within your organization or your community, because, you know, every day, and those of us that do lead people or work with people, we know that every day is different. So adaptability is important. I also consider communication and connectivity with people to be extremely important, and especially in my field of human resources. If you can't connect to people, nobody's going to want to work with you. And part of my job as well is I'm a certified workplace investigator. So I investigate harassment claims and violence in the workplace type claims for as a third party. And so if I wasn't able to clearly communicate or connect with people, I wouldn't be very good at my job. And so I do find that in everyday life, wherever I go, I try to connect with people, even if it's at the grocery store, right? Like, you know, smiling, although right now it's covered, but smiling with people and having that kind of connection really allows you to kind of be a leader within your community, because you make those connections and you network, and you know, you're successful. In my workplaces, I'm a consultant, so I do work very closely with my clients on a regular basis, and I could be working with people that are, you know, CEOs of companies. I could be working with you know, everybody at every level. And so I find it to be one of the most important skills is connecting with everybody at every level, because, you know, I have to be sitting at the strategic table and communicating and trying to help companies grow and support a framework. But then I also have to be able to connect with people so that every single employee feels comfortable coming forward. And so I find that those are really important. And I think probably two of the most important ones I can think of. And the third and final one I'll mention from my huge list, or this would be the only question we would answer today, is authenticity. So that really helps with the connectivity, is being yourself and being true to yourself. Because in every, you know, every woman we speak with, whether it's our children or our nieces or our mothers, if you're authentic, then you create that connection automatically. And so you're able to mentor them and teach them how to be leaders themselves. And I think that's important.
Thank you. I'm writing all these down because they're all very important and things that I need to work on a daily basis. So thank you. Haley, did you want to speak to your practical skills, please?
I do have something to add. So looking at it from a political perspective, what kind of got me involved in politics was something very personal. And it started with local politics, and then it kind of spiraled into, I have something to contribute on every level of the political spectrum. So what Sherry was saying about communication, I think it's so important. Engaging with people is so important. Let me just look at my note here. Using your voice, I think, is going to be my theme for this panel. But I think if you use our voice, we all have something that speaks to us, something that, you know, triggers some sort of fire in us. And as Sherry was saying, if we're authentic about that, we can be change makers and leaders in the community, and it can empower us. And I think if you sit back and kind of let this world, which can be all encompassing, kind of overwhelm us, it can be pretty scary at times, pretty daunting, especially now that we're in a pandemic, and, you know, the connection to people is maybe a little harder to, it's a little harder to make connections sometimes. But we have wonderful tools out there that can still help us, empower us, and get us out there. So I think probably one of the most important things we can do to help women rise and empower in a practical level is really use our voice, draw from our personal experiences, and use our voice to help be a change maker.
Thank you. And I want to send kudos to you for putting your name in the hat to run for regional council. I sat through the session last night where we had Laura Ip and Diana Hewson and Lori Littleton speaking, and just how I admire people like them and you who would put your name in the hat, because it is a very challenging job. And so kudos to you.
Exceptional women. I'm really,
yes.
I'm learning so much from them. And it was 2 years ago today that the election.
Yes.
They won and I lost. So good.
That's okay. You never lose when you put your name in the hat and try.
That's
absolutely.
It was a lot of fun. Really, really great experience. So thank you, Lauren.
Wow. So carrying on this this practical skills. So how do you think practical skills come together to create leadership opportunities or experiences for women? Maybe we'll start with Sherry, please.
Sure. I think it's funny because people are in leadership situations often and they don't realize they're in a leadership situation. So as an example, as a mother, right, you know that they're your kids and you're raising your kids, but you often have the opportunity to be a leader, right? So you're teaching your kids, you're teaching your daughters, even your sons, to be leaders themselves. And so I think it's really important to realize that these leadership places are all around you, and these opportunities are all around you, whether you're volunteering at your child's school, or you're just out in the community and you have a learning moment. Those are all leadership opportunities. So I think taking a practical skill of listening to what's going on around you, whether it's your kids' attitudes towards something, or if you're out somewhere and you hear somebody say something that you feel like you need to correct for your children, have that talk with your children, right? Take those leadership moments, but listening, really, really important. And I think, not only as a mother, but as a friend, you're taking those moments to be, excuse me, a leader to your friend group or your connections in the workplace. You always have these opportunities to use your practical skills to your advantage. And I think the more of these practical skills that you're open to learning, and to discovering about yourself. Another one that I find, and this really helps you when you are trying to find leadership opportunities, is to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And I'm finding with leadership these days, like the more senior levels are showing their vulnerability. And I think showing that you are a vulnerable person and that you're not perfect as a leader is one of the best ways to become a better leader, because then you can populate around you the people who are strong in the areas where you might be vulnerable or a little bit weaker in. If you show people, hey, nobody's perfect. I might run an organization. I might run a family. I might, do whatever I'm doing in the community. I am allowing others to see that I'm human. And I think that's really important right now. Because like you were saying, Haley, the connectivity isn't always there because of things like you can't hug anybody, right? Or you can't shake hands right now, or you can't be in the same room with people. And so it's really important to show that you are vulnerable and you're willing to accept your weaknesses and bolster yourself with those around you who are really strong in those areas. And so I think bringing together all those practical skills really allows you to open yourself up to those leadership opportunities.
Thank you. And I think you've reminded me of a very important point that we've been talking about all this week, that leadership doesn't mean that you're the president of a company or a CEO. We're all leaders in our own different ways, in our families, our friend circles, religious beliefs, all the communities that we're involved with, we are leaders. So these skills are transferable and used across all of those different communities that we're a part of. So Siobhan, can you share how you think these practical skills create leadership opportunities?
Yeah, so relating everything back to financial literacy and what I was saying before about, understanding your household cash flow and managing money for yourself and for your family, I think the skills, it gives you confidence, right? And I think that confidence really translates to every aspect of your life. It can improve your immediate relationships, but you can use those skills for your career and progression through that. And it's something that you can put on your resume, like understanding budgeting and understanding money management is a skill that you can use on your resume to further yourself in your career. And it's something that you can also use with volunteer opportunities. When you're volunteering, it's a skill that you can bring to the table and to the organizations that you care about. And I think in volunteering and in growing your network through your community, you're making friendships and you're expanding your network that can further increase your ability to have more job opportunities and to really develop those skills. Maybe you'll find a mentor. So I think that the financial literacy skills really translate into every aspect of your life, not only with having your household income and budget and money in place, but just the confidence that it gives you in general to then go out and feel like you can do it for other people, your friends and your family, and, at work and at your volunteering. An example that I have, we are a hockey family, and growing up, I played travel hockey. My nephew is currently playing travel hockey. You do fundraisers for the teams. So somebody, a parent or someone, needs to manage the money for the team, right? They have money that they buy into tournaments, and you get jackets for the team. And it's simple things like that where you can use your skills just to help out the people around you and help and participate in things that you care about. So I really think that it can grow your network and just create a big snowball effect and really improve your quality of life.
Wow, thank you. So maybe I'll ask Haley, start with Haley with this question. Why do you think it's important to develop the type of skills that you specialize in, that you've talked about?
It's a funny question. I was reading and I'm like, what skills do I have that potentially other people haven't drawn upon in themselves? But I don't think that's the case. I think that we all really are we're all capable. And certainly with respect to politics, the beauty about politics is that it affects us all. And every single idea, every single experience we have and we can draw upon and learn from others is something that we need to incorporate into making that change. And again, using your voice, getting your voice out there to say that, this happened to me, or, with respect to me, I had 3 children very quickly and we could not find daycare. I'm talking to my mom about it, and I have a degree, and then I have 2 postgraduate certificates, tons of volunteer experience. So I'm qualified to be out there working and earning an income for my family, but we had to make the decision for me to stay at home. And it was a decision I'm very grateful that we were able to make. But that's political. Why do we not have a federal childcare plan? Why does our region not make this a huge priority? And why isn't it a standing agenda item on every single meeting, right? We mentioned Diana Houston at the beginning of this. She's a regional counselor and she's doing some work on that now, but this is work that really hasn't been done in many, many years. My mom says 40 years, I'm 41 years old, and she still struggled with it back then. So these are changes. These are little personal experiences that we have that we need to draw upon to make change. And we need to start asking questions as women. We did not make the system. We're inheriting the system. We made the people who made the system. So it's very, very important to us to start engaging. And I know that for some people, they might not be confident, but really just remind yourself that the beauty is politics is about our personal experiences and creating an environment where we can all live. We're going to talk about equity in one of the other questions coming up, really in an equitable and inclusive environment. We worked on equality for many years, and now we're talking about equity and how to make those changes to make it a place for all of us to live, and to live well is really the point. So, I encourage all the women out there who may be watching to draw upon your personal experiences. Yeah, you certainly can reach out to me, but go directly to your counselors and have expectations that they get back to you, and have expectations that if they're not problem solving in the meetings that they're having, that you'll problem solve together and they'll represent you when they get to council. So all of those things I think are really important when we're looking at what skills that we have that we can create leadership opportunities for us. So
it's such a wonderful feeling, I find, to listen to people like you talking about taking that step into wanting to go into politics to help your community, and thinking, wow, you're somebody that I can relate to, and it's possible to do it. I mean, in the past, you always think, oh, politicians, they're somewhere else, and
they're not untouchable, and they're not a prime minister, and this is not partisan at all, but we have a prime minister that did a town hall a few blocks from my house. I got to go see him and speak, in an opportunity. I didn't get a chance to ask him a question, but those opportunities exist. In the Niagara region, I'll bugging all the politicians. So I know that politicians in Fort Erie will get back to me, and in St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. And, it's about engaging. And to be honest, I think if they're a good politician, they want you to be engaged and they want to get back to you. So that's about being a representative. So just, really, I encourage people to do it.
Thanks, Haley. So Siobhan, can you answer why it's important to develop these skills that you specialize in?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of my previous points come into respect, right? Because it can snowball into your career and your volunteering and your personal life to help your friends and family. Statistically speaking, to develop your financial literacy skills, if you're in a relationship with a man, if your spouse or your husband, if he's the one that, takes care of the finances and does everything like that, statistically speaking, women live longer than men. So at some point in your life, it's going to come up that you're going to need to make financial decisions for yourself. And so are you equipped with the skills to do so? And are you confident in yourself to make the decisions on your own? I think that's a big point. And it could be in reverse, right? Like if you're the woman and you do everything, does your husband know? If something happens, does he know all the banking information and simple things like that, right? Like divorce rates are pretty high. If your parents take care of your finances and help you with all of that, they're not going to be around forever. So I think statistically, at some point in your life, you will have to make financial decisions for yourself. So it's really about, do you have the skills to do so? It's not about if it will happen or if it will come about. It's when you will have to make these decisions. And so I think it's really important to have the skill set so that you're ready, so that you're financially independent now. And if something happens in the future, it doesn't matter because you can handle it. You don't want to be taken advantage of, especially maybe when you've gone your whole life with someone else helping you. So I think it's really, really important to have the skills and to raise your kids to have the skills so that it doesn't really matter what the future holds, you're ready for it.
Thank you. That's very important words of wisdom. Sherry, did you want to add to that?
I do. So like I said before, I mean, in human resources, you have to kind of specialize in the whole gamut of practical skills, right? Because you have to be able to, at a moment's notice, dive into any unknown situation, which has been my week this week. Every moment somebody's calling me and I'm having to switch between a million different areas to be able to think about different things. But I think for women, there's been so many women throughout history that have fought for us to be where we are. And so, for an example, we're all educated women, right? And so that hasn't always been the case. Women haven't been able to go to school. And I think it's important for us to continue to lead and teach to the next generations that they too should have these practical skills. They too should have some education so that they can keep pushing to make sure that, there's always equality. But as far as, human resources, practical skills that I use on a regular basis, I would say being able to negotiate is really important, and not necessarily in a monetary fashion, but to be able to be educated and knowledgeable in your area of expertise so that you can bring to the table the important information to be able to sway a decision. And so why that's important to me is, like I said before, sometimes I'm working at a strategic table with the leadership team. In some instances, I'm the only female at the table. So if I didn't have these practical skills, I would sit back and I would be probably considered a secretary, right? Sherry, take the minutes, which has been said to me before. And so I think it's important to really have these skills where I can say, why am I taking the minutes? I have a lot to say. And here's what I have to say. And here's why I think those decisions might not be the best for your overall organization, but also for the culture of your organization, because that's what we really want to always have our pulse on is, how's our organization feeling, and how would it make the women feel if that decision was made? And so I think it's important for us to harness these many, many skills that I have on my list, so that we can sit at any table that we need to sit at to make sure we've got our point of view across and that we are able to sway a decision that might not be the best.
Thank you. So we've been talking a lot about the different skills, and a lot of them that you women, and of course you're all very successful, and the skills that you have are very common across the three of you. Are there other skills? I know these ones that we've talked about, and maybe we can emphasize them again, but what are some of the top practical skills that women should strive for? Where are we here? Haley, did you want to?
Sure, I'm happy to start this one off. I'm going to read a little note because I wrote this down. It's very important. So I thought about women, and I had this instance where there was a counselor. I was really, really upset about the work that counselor was doing. So I started talking about engaging on social media, and I received a message from a friend, and she said, Haley, I really want to support you. I think it's time for me to get involved. She said, I just don't have a lot of time. So my response to her was, I very much appreciated her support, her offering her support. But the truth is to do things well, you do need to dedicate the time to them, right? And I think, as I said in the beginning, politics really touches every single thing. The sidewalk that you walk on, the road that you drive on, the water that comes out of your faucets at home, if we're lucky enough, is all really, it's all related to politics, every single thing. So I have this friend, Melanie Sodka, and she's the capacity creator. So you want to give yourself the capacity to accomplish what you set out to do. So if you really, really believe in something, you have to dedicate the time to do it, right? You don't just want to be one of those people out there on Facebook that are just spewing all the things that upset you. You really want to engage with people because they need to hear from you, and people deserve the respect, right? You need to really engage with them and not at them. There's a really big difference. So I think, my answer for this one, really one of the top practical skills is to really know what your capacity level is. If you have a really busy home life, you're not going to be volunteering on all of these things. I'm so jealous that Siobhan was talking about travel hockey. We didn't have the time at home or the finances, for my parents to do that. So I digressed a little bit there. I'm a little distracted now, but I think that really, if you want to do something, do it well. I was lucky enough to volunteer on a few committees and boards, and I just recently resigned from one. I didn't feel that I was contributing in the way that I like to contribute. And I didn't feel that I was truthfully getting what I needed to be getting out of volunteering on that committee. So I'm going to figure out how to contribute in another way. So I did resign. So figuring out what you're focused on, and if you have the capacity to do it, and making sure that you have the time to do what's important to you, I think is really, really important skill for women to start to understand that we literally cannot do everything, and we need to stop putting that pressure on ourselves.
Excellent point. Thank you. Siobhan, did you want to add to this, please?
Yeah, so in terms of finance, I think there's so many different skills that people can develop, and I think it's sometimes frustrating to know where to start. So I think the number one thing there's three things. One, I think, is your cash flows and your budgeting, and it really just comes down to like management and organization. Knowing how much money comes in every month and how much money goes out every month is the number one thing that you should know. And it's just writing down what your expenses are and your income. And having a budget is not necessarily to put a chokehold on how much money you spend. And it's not to go to the grocery store and you have $50 and you can't spend a penny more. That's not what it's about. You just need to understand how much money you have left over at the end of every month, right? Is that number positive or negative? If it's negative, it means you're accumulating debt over time. And if it's positive, what is the number? How much is it? And it's okay to have ranges as well. So when you're having a budget, really understanding what your money looks like on a monthly basis is really important. So having like a pre-COVID and a during COVID budget is fine because everyone's expenses are changing, right? Having ranges for every month, I will at least spend this much, but it's never more than this. Again, fine. Just understanding that is really, really important. And I think it's a first step for everyone to take. The next step will apply to, I think, most people, but not everyone, is just managing your debt. Do you know your interest rates for everything? Do you know where all of your debt is? Are you on top of it? Do you know how much you're spending towards each thing? And are you doing it in the most efficient way you can? So that would be the second one. And just understanding your credit score, which can impact the first two. Do you know what it is? Do you know where to go to look for it? Do you know what things impact it and make it go up and make it go down? Because that can impact like large purchases and how you go about your day-to-day life. I think those three things, maybe like steps to take, not necessarily skills, but it does come down to management and organization and being on top of everything, which I think is a skill, in being involved in that in your household, can then, as we spoke about before, translate to volunteering, into sports, into your career, and snowball.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sherry, did you want to build on that?
Absolutely. So when I first started thinking about this, I said, okay, if I was mentoring a woman, so let's say it's my daughter. So my daughter is 16. So what are some practical skills I think would be really, really important for her to take into the world that would make her a leader? And, you know, a lot of the ones came back to me that I've already been talking about. So connectivity and how that's so important. The ability to adapt to a situation on the spur of the moment when you need to. And sorry, mine are not as, you know, as tangible as Siobhan's. I think yours are great. I'm like, oh yes, I should. I mean, these are kind of soft skill. You have to know where your abilities lie, right? And how to kind of improve upon them if you need to. I think those top two things really build on confidence level. And I think your confidence in being able to speak in front of other people, bringing your ideas to the table and advocating for yourself and other people are really, really important. So I think your confidence level help you to be able to do that. And then authenticity, like I said before, but I think one that I haven't really touched on, but I mean, we've all laughed a bunch during this time, right? And I think before we had just to let everybody who's listening to us in on a secret, we had a little chat before this to kind of get to know each other. And I'm going to speak for everybody, but I feel like we had a great connection. And I think all of us have a pretty good sense of humor. And I think humor comes in handy. And some of the best leaders I've ever worked with have an amazing sense of humor, which means they can make other people laugh, but they also don't take themselves too seriously. And I think that leads back to the vulnerability and being able to laugh at yourself if you make a mistake versus being angry with yourself, because that takes away your adaptability. It takes away your confidence, takes away your flexibility because you now are angry with yourself that you made a mistake. And so I think humor is kind of the last one I wanted to touch on because it is so, so important. And I've seen the difference it can make in a room of 20 people. Right? If there's a really stressful situation and somebody's brought up a point that's rubbing people in the wrong way, well, why don't we bring up some other solutions, but also a little bit of levity, right? Because that opens everybody's minds up to better negotiation when it's not so serious or so angry, right? And so humor is really, really important to all of the things that I've been talking about throughout. And I think it helps you to really make those connections that are necessary to become a leader.
Thank you. I think that is so true and makes everyone's lives much easier, their jobs much easier when they enjoy being there and enjoy the people they work with. And it's wonderful advice. Earlier, Haley, you were talking about equitable society and leadership skills. So the YWCA's vision is an equitable society where women and families thrive. So how do your unique skills, and I think you have some experiences here you want to touch on, how do they contribute to creating a more equitable society for women?
Well, I identify as a woman, so I think that's important. I am in a same-sex relationship. I think that's important. I think the fact that I'm a parent is important. I have a niece and nephew, parents who are aging. Also in really great shape, mom and dad, if you happen to be watching. But I think that it's really important that we kind of look at our lives, right? And we look at, how we're contributing and really how society is built. I used to think that I was a very inclusive in person. And then 2020 happened and I honestly, to change my perspective so much, and I've learned so much. I dedicated a lot of time to learning and reading in the last year. And, you know, it's about inviting people in. I think, unfortunately, we're in a world where so many billionaires exist. It seems that in order to succeed, everybody has to be on the take. That's really not the way I view politics. I think that if we're building the best communities, that everybody has to have an opportunity to contribute. As I said earlier, I'm lucky enough to be on the Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and I cannot tell you what a humbling experience it was walking to that room and seeing all of those faces. I get chills thinking about it. I thought, oh God, I'm so out of my league, so out of my league in this group. But you know, I've read enough that, you know, make sure you're not the smartest person in the room, and I certainly wasn't. So an incredible learning opportunity for me. But I think when we're looking at building a more equitable society, somebody like me has a lot of privileges, right? Just, you know, I think that, you know, I spoke a lot about making sure your voice is heard, but there's a lot to learn about if we just listen to. Right. So one of the wonderful things that's happened recently politically at the Niagara region, Diana Hewson brought forward a women's advisory committee. And there was a lot of discussion from a lot of her male colleagues about that advisory committee being open to male membership. And I really struggled with that, and I fought really hard. I went to speak to Counsel. I spoke a lot about it on social media. This is just a little example. What an incredible opportunity for women to have a voice at Counsel. It would have to go through corporate services, but to make sure things that are important to us are sometimes our health, our access to our whole health is.
Haley, we can't hear you.
Oh, maybe it was just me. Oh,
We can't hear
It is
you.
unstable.
can't hear you.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yes.
You're
Okay.
back.
Sorry, I don't know where I left off. I'll just continue. But to really to say, no, we're talking about equity. We're not talking about equality. A women's advisory committee should be made up of people who identify as women, right? So right now, that's not how that committee is built. So we have a wonderful opportunity for this committee, but we're not quite there yet. So just continue to drive the message home, and whatever it is that you believe in. Politics can be a very long process. There's tons of committees you have to go through, and you've got, you know, reports, and obviously staff have to be heavily involved, and the public has to be heavily involved. But stay the course and make sure that that we're thinking of things, and we're thinking about other people as we begin to make decisions that will really affect us all and build our community. So
Thank you for that. Sherry or Siobhan, did you want to add to that?
Me?
You want me to go?
Either one. Sure.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. So I think in human resources, we have probably some situations where we have direct ability to work with equality. So when it comes to pay equity, as an example, right, within an organization, we're constantly reviewing compensation to make sure it's equitable across the organization, male, female, as long as everybody's paid the same and within the same. It's more about analyzing a pay band than it is who's in the position. So making sure we're all paid equally. As well, making sure that all the women in the organization have a voice. So, you know, making sure, as an example, that we have policies posted around harassment, violence in the workplace, that sort of thing, that open up the channels for people to reach out. And I think a lot of times, and at least in, I'd say probably 80% of the investigations I've done, maybe even more, it's been women who have been feeling harassed. And sometimes it's by other women, sometimes it's by men, but people who are feeling harassed most of the time have been women. And so giving them that channel to be able to reach out to myself or reach out to their manager, and educating their managers on what to do, so they don't just say, don't worry about it. They actually take action. And I think that's, we have the direct ability to do that, to make sure there's equality for those voices to be heard. And then another one is making sure that there are females sitting at those strategic tables, or at least helping an organization to understand the importance of having women sitting at those leadership tables. Just because if we don't have that kind of other side of the coin, a lot of things get lost. And so it's important, and especially with myself, I often can get to that table and right away I can realize that they definitely need some more female voices in there. And so I think it's important that as an HR person, we are able to kind of influence that as well. And so just definitely listening to the community, listening to, my family and my kids, and listening to my nieces and nephews, and listening to, the next generation, really being able to guide them in a way that leads us towards a more equitable community as well is really important.
Okay, thank you. Siobhan, I'm just going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip on, because the last question I think is very important, and I do have a specific question from the chat room for you at the end. So the last question everybody wants to know, so how do we acquire these skills? How did you acquire them, and how can we acquire them? So I'll start with Siobhan, if you don't mind, for this one, but I do have other question for you coming up.
Yeah, so how I acquired my skills, I think it was something. This is not going to sound very good. It came naturally. I went to university. I went for business school. I took law abroad. I came back and got my licenses. I'm currently working towards my CFP, which is my finance designation. So it's just, a higher level of understanding and more thorough of everything. But for me, to do those things, I put myself through school. Right. And so it was always, working hard, saving my money, and making sure that I could afford my tuition. I paid to go abroad. I paid for my flight and to stay over there and to come back and graduate. And it was difficult. And so I understand that it can be hard to acquire certain skills, but I think for now, for me, I read a lot of books, I listen to podcasts, and I think for everybody watching, just finding an advisor that you have to like your advisor. If you don't like them, you're not going to listen to them. You're not going to want to talk to them. And you're not going to seek their help when you truly need it. So I think, speaking to different people to find someone that you actually enjoy speaking with, because their role is to help you and to support you and to educate you in learning the skills that you want to personally develop, so that you can do things on your own. So I think finding an advisor, specifically someone that you like, and that you get along with, because it is a long-term relationship with the person as well, right? So I think that is the easiest and least costly way, because meetings with advisors are free. So that's what I would do. And I would look online and set up meetings with, several different people until you find someone you like. And the analogy I like to use, because I know not everyone likes to talk about money, but if you go to the hairdresser and you get a terrible haircut, you're not going to stop getting your haircut forever. You're going to have to find a new hairdresser. So if you hate your advisor, if you've had bad experiences, I really would not let that discourage you from seeking somebody that you like and having that person be your teacher. I think that's super important. And then they'll be able to recommend books for you and podcasts and things to further develop those skills. I'll also say the author David Bach, it's B-A-C-H. He has tons of books. They're great. I really like them. Those are good to read. And they're more like stories than dry finance books. I think that's important to note.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Haley.
I think the first step is to start asking questions. And I know this was the reoccurring theme for me, but I wanted to answer every one of these questions that way. So never stop asking questions. If the answer doesn't make sense to you, get them to answer it again. If it's not good enough for you, get them to answer it again. Ask another question, and make sure that if you're speaking with politicians, representatives, that they do engage with you. You send an email and say, my expectations are that you get back to me by, and ensure that they do. If not, follow up again. If not, they usually have somebody that they're responsible to at Counsel. So then follow up with that person, but never stop asking questions. And I think this is really, really important. About 5 years ago, I lost my job. I was back in school. I was pregnant with my son, who's about to be 5. On Monday, and it was a really, really difficult time for me. And this event was one of the launching pads to help me kind of get back on my feet. So women in Niagara were really supportive to me. I didn't even have enough money to participate in this event as a guest, and they supported me and got me a ticket. And here I am, a few years later, participating as a panelist. So the reason I am talking about that story is because I cannot tell you how important change makers are in your life, and to surround yourself with people who believe in you. If you say, I think one day I would like to be mayor. If you have people around you that laugh at that and don't talk about it again, those aren't your people. If you have somebody that says, a few years ago you said to me, I think I'd like to be mayor. Do you still want to do that? What are you doing to work towards that? Those are your people, and surround yourself with those people, because I think that is the most important thing in life, is to surround yourself with positive influences.
Thank you. And Sherry.
Yeah, so I think, and what you ladies have said is amazing, and I think it's great, and it shows that the steps you have to take very much depend on what you want to do, or what day is it, what role are you in? These things all make a difference as to what steps you would take. And when I think about, and going back to the practical skills we've been talking to the whole time, I think something I've had to use throughout my development into the field of HR is flexibility. So I went to, my undergrad was in psychology, but I knew when I finished, I didn't want to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a therapist or anything like that, although most times I am in various roles of life. But I ended up then moving to California and working in social work. And then I said, oh, I like social work, but I also like, the HR side. So I went through the steps to obtain my HR management certification in California. Then I moved back to Canada. So then my colleague said, you should really look at getting a designation. So then I had to do my Canadian school. So it's all about the flexibility side. And if you see that there's something you want to achieve, go for it. There's never things that are, there's going to be things holding you back, but nothing's impossible. And so I think it's inspiring to know that we're pretty lucky where we are and where we live, that there are so many available opportunities, and just using the practical skills that we use every day without even realizing it to actually obtain the goals that you're looking for. And so for HR in particular, if you're interested, reach out to me. If you're interested going into the field, I'd be happy to chat with you. But really finding a mentor is something that I think is important, much like looking for an advisor, like Siobhan said, right? Looking for somebody who's been in the field for a while, who can really give you some good advice as to where you should go, just to kind of give you those steps that you can take for your individual plan.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing this information with us. Grace, do we have time? We're at 3:55. Do we have time for question? I'm going to go with the question. Sure. Okay. We do have a question, and this one's for Siobhan. Financial security is so important for women, but how do you counsel women who struggle with low-paying, precarious work?
Yeah, you know what? It can be difficult, and I've been there too. Just with, putting myself through school. I was working full-time, and I was in school full-time in university. Like, I wasn't buying textbooks for all of my classes because I couldn't afford them. It can be difficult, and depending on what your goals are and where you want to go and what you're trying to achieve, I think just from my experiences, there's so many different things that you can do. And just like different accounts that you can use to your advantage, and different things to do with your taxes to get returns back. So that's extra money for you. There's a bunch of things that you can do, and it's hard to say just like not knowing who specifically I'm speaking to or what their situation is. But all I know is I have been there too, like making less than 20 grand a year and trying to pay for school. And pay for food and like your car, it sucks. And I've been there. So I think that I can help you. Like, well, and it doesn't have to be me, but I think like advisors, I think a lot of people think that you have to be rich to go to an advisor and you have to have money, and that's not the case. If there's an advisor out there who turns you away because you're not wealthy enough, go find another one, because there are people out there that will help you. And they can really go through and see, you know, what they can do. They can help you budget and help you do everything. They're supposed to be there to help you through everything. And like I've been there too, I get it. So like there is hope behind it. So I just think literally just finding someone to help you is like the first step.
Thank you. I cannot believe how quickly an hour goes. This has just been amazing. I want to thank the panelists for all your insights, all your stories, your words of wisdom. You're never too old to learn new skills. And I've been taking notes here of the skills that I need to work on and how to improve my leadership skills. So thank you so much for helping guide all the women that are participating. Well, I shouldn't say all women. There's probably some men too. I know there's been some men participating in some of the sessions. So thank you so much for everything, for sharing with us. It means so much. And thank you for your passion and your wisdom, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And I hope that everybody will join us for the closing ceremonies of the Leadership Summit. So thank you.